What's going on, everybody? Today we're going to talk about the Skelton Crew. A couple of things. One, Lee Isaac Chung just let a couple of quotes out, one from his movie Twisters and another one talking about the Skelton Crew that I want to focus on in this video that get me pretty excited about the show. Now, production ended on this almost 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, and by the time the Skelton Crew releases, which is rumored to be around Christmas time, Thanksgiving, Christmas time, around the holidays, it's going to be almost 2 years exactly from the time it ended production. I know it got postponed for like a year at one point, but the timing of this is pretty interesting, coming off the heels of The Acolyte and the divisiveness. So I want to talk about this article here and another one where Lee Isaac Chung talks about kind of what the show is about. And one of the interesting things here, we'll read this quote from the Movie Web is, so the Star Wars live action series Skelton Crew doesn't premiere on Disney Plus until later this year, but Oscar-nominated director Lee Isaac Chung has already given this series his seal of approval. In a new interview with Inside Total Film podcast, the Twisters director discussed his involvement with the series and the beautiful perspective series co-creator John Watts is bringing to the series. When he describes the show as this, the show is described as a coming-of-age adventure with a group of children at the core of the story. Chung hopes that the series attracts families to follow the story, something the newer, more mature audience hasn't done in a while. Now his quote is this: "What I hope is that it's really going to touch families, and families are going to want to spend a lot of time with the show." So it's John Watts, Jon Favreau serving as executive producers, as well as Dave Filoni. And then Chung is joined by David Lowery from The Green Knight, and Pete's Dragon, Jake Schreier with Beef and Marvel Thunderbolts. We got Bryce Dallas Howard, who is a great director. Then we have Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinhardt from Everything Everywhere All at Once, which if you guys haven't seen that, it is a great, great movie. Chung had nothing but praise for Watts' approach to the series and believes it will be the show's greatest appeal. What he says is, "I can't wait for people to see this thing. It's got a lot of John Watts in it, and anyone who's a fan of John Watts does. He's very childlike in a beautiful way, and in the way that he tells stories, and how he captures a childlike perspective in things. He brings a beautiful perspective to this story of young people in the Star Wars universe." And in an encouraging statement, Chung says the show's original concept and cast convinced him to sign on to direct. With criticism of recent Star Wars content over pointless fan service and underwhelming storylines, Chung's enthusiasm for the show should give disappointed fans hope. He says, "I felt like I hadn't seen this. When I read all of the scripts and when I was looking at the design of what he was designing, he asked if I would be on board. It was a no-brainer for me once I saw what he was working on. And then also working with him on that show and with Jude and all the incredible actors who we have, it was a lot of fun. We were just having fun all the time. The kids were incredible and great." Before we get on to the rest of this, I want to come over to this here. Now, this is what I found interesting. So the show Twisters is out now in movie theaters, and it's getting pretty positive reviews. But one of the things that people were thinking that he was going to do, because it's Hollywood, because of right now with the political messaging, was that he was going to talk about climate change or put that in the movie somehow and deliver a message. But what he said was interesting. I think this is why it's interesting that this is 2 years after production, that it's finally going to come out, and it just happens to be after The Acolyte, which I think is heavily messaged right here, where he says, "Chung, who directed the franchise installment film centered on tornado chasers played by Glenn Powell and Daisy Edgar Jones, told CNN that he opted not to explicitly include the term climate change in the film." Now, here's what he says. "I just wanted to make sure that with the movie, we don't ever feel like it's putting forward any message. I just don't feel like films are meant to be message-oriented. I think what we're doing is showing the reality of what's happened on the ground. We don't shy away from saying that things are changing." While Lee, who grew up on the border of Arkansas and Oklahoma, added that his own brushes with extreme weather as a child left a very big imprint on how he views nature, he didn't want the film itself to be preaching any sort of political statement. He says, "I wanted to make sure that we're never creating a feeling that we're preaching a message. That's certainly not what I think cinema should be about. I think it should be a reflection of the world." Now, I like that he did this. I like the way he says this is, it's not that he wanted to show the reality of what's happening on the ground. He didn't want to shy away from saying that things are changing. He didn't want it to feel overly preachy or like he's trying to deliver some kind of political message, which I think is good. And then let's go back to this. And one of the interesting things too about the movie Twisters is that originally Helen Hunt, who acted in the first movie Twister back in the 90s, is that she approached the studio with a pitch about black and brown people only chasing tornadoes, and it was declined. But the script that was approved was this one here that Lee Isaac Chung has directed. So let's go back here to the Skelton Crew, and we'll go down here a little bit lower to see what's exactly going on. For a series due out in just a few months, Lucasfilm has been surprisingly quiet about the Skelton Crew. An official description was released last year and states in the first episode of Skelton Crew, we're introduced to 4 kids who make a mysterious discovery on their seemingly safe home planet and get lost in a strange and dangerous galaxy. Finding their way home, meeting unlikely allies and enemies will be a greater adventure than they ever imagined. So for me, this seems like a welcome relief from what we just saw in The Acolyte. It's a family-oriented show from the kids' perspective, but it's got themes in it that hopefully adults will enjoy as well. It's not overly preachy, according to Lee Isaac Chung, or that's his philosophy anyway. So I think that what we're going to see here, hopefully, is just a good story, a coming-of-age story with children, maybe like Stranger Things or The Goonies is what a lot of people are saying. Now, in this Entertainment Weekly article, Chris Ford, who's one of the co-creators and co-showrunners of Skelton Crew, says this: Skelton Crew's tone is an adventure. We wanted it to be a lot of fun, but of course, along with adventure comes the downside of it, which is danger. And when the kids are in danger, it's extra fraught. So we played with that, but overall, we wanted it to be just a fun adventure. As for whether the show is specifically targeting younger audiences with its pint-sized cast, Ford notes, hopefully it can be for all ages. When we told Kathy Kennedy about what we wanted to go for, that Amblin tone, what she would say is that they never thought of those movies for kids. They just happen to be about kids, a story of a kid going on an adventure, so it could be for anyone. And as for the adult in the room, or on the screen, as it were, Jude Law will neither confirm nor deny that he's playing a Jedi, though his character does levitate an object in the trailer shown at Star Wars Celebration in April. I can't tell you very much about my character, the actor says. He is someone that children meet on their attempt to get home. He is like a lot of the world that they experience, contradictory and at times a place of nurture and other times a place of threat. It's that balance between light and dark, much like the Force itself, that Law believes will propel the show forward. Because it's through their eyes, he says of the younger characters, at times there's a sort of goofy nature and a goofy relationship between the kids and the adults. And then other times it's really quite dark and quite scary, which I guess is what the world probably looks like to an awful lot of 11-year-olds. So based on everything that people are saying with the directors, what the show's about, the philosophy of people like Lee Isaac Chung, I think that it's perfect timing for something like the Skelton Crew to come out, as long as it's a good story, and that's all we really care about as Star Wars fans. We want a good script, we want good characters, we want to be able to have somebody to root for. Family friendly is something that we haven't had in a little while. I think that it's very promising, and hopefully we get a trailer release sometime soon, but let me know what you think. Are you excited about the Skelton Crew? Has The Acolyte ruined everything for you? Like a lot of people, it seems to have. People seem to not care as much about Star Wars, have become apathetic. I, for one, am hopeful that the Skelton Crew will be a breath of fresh air. It's going to be tied in with the Mandoverse and the timeline. It's after Return of the Jedi. It's around Mandalorian season 3-ish. We saw a pirate from Mandalorian season 3 that's supposed to be in the trailer. So let me know again what you guys think down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and may the Force be with you.